What's going on, people? So the outcome of this stage of the Tournament of Power has already been decided. The preliminaries are officially over. This episode leaves no doubt whatsoever. Toppo is an absolute tank. I think this is the first time where we've seen the energy of a god of destruction being used in a very defensive way. It was mind-boggling. It was ridiculous. Like, Frieza and 17 need not apply further after this episode because we know what the outcome is, and they tried to build up the suspense by the end there with 17 sending a beam over to Toppo, but we already know how this ends. In fact, we pretty much got confirmation thanks to the preview where it's like literally Toppo fighting Vegeta. In my opinion, and I said this last week as well, they should have sent Vegeta over to deal with Toppo a lot sooner because it was just so painful. It was obvious that he was going to fodder die 17 and Frieza. Also, according to Goku's words during the preview, apparently Toppo is so strong that Vegeta will consider sacrificing himself next week to take Toppo out. The episode itself actually starts with Vegeta and Goku double teaming Jiren, and it's kind of like the same thing that we've been getting. It's like the guys literally can't touch him. At one point, they do kind of like try a combined effort where Vegeta kind of goes away and Goku holds Jiren and Vegeta hits him with the final flash, or at least tries to, because Jiren uses his energy from his eyes to block that attack, so it doesn't really do anything. And then he just counters Goku and sends him flying through some pillars. The guys just can't get him to sweat. I feel like Frieza has now officially become the Gollum of this show, in the sense that in Lord of the Rings, Gollum is a character that should have been taken care of a long time ago, but he's conveniently left alive. He's left to be around the main characters because he has a very specific purpose to fulfill. So to quote Gandalf, I feel like Frieza still has a role to play yet, for good or ill, before this is all over. The rules of the tournament actually played a role in this episode, in that they actually prevented Toppo from squishing Frieza's head off. I mean, look at his face. Just boy. And that right there brings me to my next point, which is that the art and animation in certain moments of this episode, especially when it concerned Toppo and Frieza, looked amazing. Look at this shot right here. Look at this. Look at this. This is some quality stuff. Look at this shot of Frieza when he's using his Planet Buster move against Toppo. Like, tell me this doesn't remind you of classic DBZ. But then, of course, the attack doesn't really do anything and gets completely nullified by Toppo just casually flinging some Hakai, some energy of destruction that is the size of a pea. So if this had been a 1v1, I think even before Toppo transformed, it was obvious that 17 would have been pushed out of bounds because they were caught in a beam struggle, and it seemed like Toppo was pushing that in his favor. But even before that, Toppo was practically tanking everything that 17 was sending at him. And then even with Frieza hitting him, well, Golden Form Frieza, by the way, hitting him in the back, he was tanking all those blasts. Not only did he take that blast from Golden Form Frieza, but he also took that beam from 17, and he was still able to get up. And this is, again, all of this is even before transforming. After he transforms, it just gets even crazier because he now has this defense aura, this aura of destruction that is literally capable of disintegrating energy and matter. At first, Frieza tries to test run the aura, doesn't do anything. The blast completely disintegrates. Then Toppo uses the Hakai, the energy ball, the energy sphere of destruction, and Frieza gets cocky because he was able to contain one during the recruitment arc. But I believe that energy of destruction belonged to Sidra, right? But this one's just way too powerful. It's stated in the episode that this is essentially like Toppo being at the level of a god of destruction. He's a candidate to replace Belmod or Belmood, whatever you want to call him. And the thing just explodes, and it actually, I appreciate that it exploded because it actually changes the color of the sky. It changes the atmosphere. I was kind of getting tired of the green. It just looked like it was polluted, like it was just like toxic waste. But now it looks different. There's two very quick notes that I want to make regarding the people who are still in the stands watching the tournament. The first one is the fact that Beerus calls Gohan and acknowledges him by his name instead of calling him Goku's son. He calls him Gohan, which, again, I guess it could be interpreted as him like doing some damage control, you know, because of the misuse of Gohan's character last week. And then the second thing that I want to mention is that at one point there's this ball of destruction headed towards the audience, and I thought it would have been cooler if somebody from the stands had actually stood up and blocked that thing or redirected it or something. But overall, I think the point of that scene was for exposition. It was for Beerus to say, I've noticed that it actually takes Toppo some time to charge up that that energy ball. So maybe there might be an opening there, but then Gohan says like, well, that still doesn't matter because even while he's charging, he's still covered in that aura that disintegrates matter. So it's a very complicated, very difficult thing. I also want to go ahead and give a huge shout out to 17 because despite being overwhelmed from a power standpoint by Toppo, he's still like an android, so it's like he's still cool, calm, and collected. And this really sort of like served to just hit home a point that I made in the beginning, where in which I think he knew that there was no way that he could overpower Toppo. So what he does is stick to strategy. And we see this because the first thing that he kind of notices is the clock. He looks at the timer, it's like, okay, 6 minutes. If I can just stall him out, and 18 confirms this, this is a stalling match for him. He has infinite energy, so he can use that to his advantage, and it's about stalling. It's about looking at that clock, and once it hits 0, if the stalling actually works, Universe 7 will be victorious because they will have 4 players on the field to Universe 11's 2. Obviously, though, thanks to Toppo's new power-up, thanks to his new God of Destruction mode, stalling him becomes pretty much impossible because even his casual like energy blasts are capable of shattering the android barrier that 17 puts up. So it's like he's running out of options. However, and this is 17 was on point in this episode. If you take nothing else from this review, just remember 17 was on point. After Frieza steps in, okay? And he steps in by throwing a rock at Toppo so he can't charge the energy of destruction. And then Toppo goes at him and, he grabs his face. He pretty much, kind of like takes care of him and he throws Frieza away. However, if you rewatch that scene, and I had to rewatch the episode to catch this, as Frieza is flying through the air, you literally see him getting hit by a rock, and it completely changes the direction that Frieza is flying in. It changes Frieza's trajectory as he flies through the air. And then we get a scene with 17 where he's like, oh, that rock was actually, aimed at you, Toppo. That was a complete lie. He was obviously aiming at Frieza because he wanted to change his direction to make sure that he fell, or at least had a shot of falling on some of those rocks below, on one of those ledges that he eventually ended up landing on. So, what if the following happens? What if this was set up for the ending of the tournament? There's only 5 minutes left. So what if this happens? What if Toppo takes out 17 next week, Vegeta takes out Toppo, or he takes himself out and takes Toppo with him, and then it's Goku versus Jiren? What if everybody is just so focused on Goku versus Jiren, going ham on each other, just looking at the top dudes, that everybody forgets that Frieza is still on the platform? I mean, he's still technically not out of bounds. He's unconscious, but he's still there. And then what could happen is that Goku and Jiren push each other out of the platform. Both of them get eliminated at the same time via an out of bounds. And then Universe 7 wins the tournament because they still have one guy on the field, which is Frieza, who is unconscious and who everybody forgot about. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the ending that I would personally prefer. I think they could go another way and, give us a more creative resolution, a more creative ending to the tournament. But I can definitely foresee this show doing that. I think that's something that the show would do. So I'm just putting it out there. Finally, shout out to Toppo as well. He looked very menacing, very obscure. He actually kind of gives up on his ideology of justice. He's like, yeah, it's like, this is like more primal now. It's like instinctive. It's about survival. It's no longer about like good versus evil. So I thought that was interesting. I like the music that they played during his rage boost. And the design that he has on his abdomen is, we've seen that in some of the patterns that in the clothing of some of the gods of destruction. So, and one of the benefits of Toppo being this strong, or at least, being stated to be at the level of a god of destruction, is that now you can scale the remaining fighters. If they engage in combat with Toppo, you can kind of scale them and see where they stand currently. So if Vegeta fights Toppo, that'll help us sort of assess where Vegeta is at. Is he equal to the level of a god of destruction? Is he above that? Is he below the level of a god of destruction? We'll find out next week. But the whole point is that you can use Toppo's power as an assessment tool to sort of like make conclusions based off like where the other fighters are at, depending on how they fare against Toppo. So, primarily Vegeta. I don't think Toppo is going to fight Goku. but we'll see what happens. That's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Next week, it's second fiddle versus second fiddle, to quote Toppo, because that's what he told Vegeta. It's like, you're second fiddle, right, to Goku, right? So it's essentially the battle of the number twos, the battle of the vice captains. We'll see how that works out. Like the video if you did. I appreciate that. Subscribe to my channel, because I do Dragon Ball Super reviews every Saturday night until it ends, until we reach that questionable hiatus. And I will catch you guys later. Thank you. Bye.